What happens when you take an age-old formula like Tetris and flip it on its side? You get Tetris Attack on the Super Nintendo. Well, kind of. But before we get into that, a quick shout out to this video sponsor, Tetris. They're your one-stop place for all things tech and gaming news. Plus, they host live shows every Sunday on YouTube and Twitch. Follow the link on screen and in the description to check out their page. And be sure to drop a follow so you don't miss out. So yeah, about that Tetris formula. Just like the title of this game, my earlier description was pretty misleading. Tetris Attack was actually a reskin of another game called Panel De Pon, which was released in Japan in October 1995. Lead produced by the father of the Game Boy, Gunpei Yokoi, the game featured a cast of fairies and small mythical creatures, while the gameplay itself played nothing like Tetris. Nintendo thought the design may only appeal to girls outside of Japan, so in planning for the international releases, they decided to replace all the characters and a few songs with those seen in the popular Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Almost a full year later, Tetris Attack was released in North America in August 1996, and then in Europe in November of the same year. With a totally different gameplay style, the co-founder of the Tetris company, Hank Rogers, reluctantly gave Nintendo the rights to use the Tetris name, something that he later went on to say he had regretted doing, since it bared no resemblance to the franchise's gameplay at all. Despite all that business and drama though, was this late SNES entry worth all that effort? After a very quick publisher intro and title screen, if there's no save data, then you will go right into a tutorial. Which makes sense, since anyone new to the game would have expected a very different playstyle. It doesn't take long, but it's very thorough in explaining the Panel De Pon mechanics. Returning to this game after a long time, I definitely appreciated it, even though I still needed some easy mode gameplay to really get the muscle memory back. When you're ready to get going, the first menu will let you pick between 1 or 2 player modes. You can also access the tutorial again if you wanted, plus an advanced tutorial where Yoshi explains advanced techniques and tactics you can pull off in gameplay. You can also adjust some options like language, CPU difficulty, and a small graphical transparency when you clear blocks. You can also make use of the music and sound effects player, as well as a character biography section. The general gameplay revolves around clearing matching blocks in sequences of 3 or more in a vertical or horizontal line. You can only move blocks around horizontally using a swapping reticle, and gravity does in fact apply here too. As you work on clearing blocks, it's possible to clear combos and start clearing chains for even better score or an attack in versus mode. As you're progressing, more and more blocks will rise up out of the floor of the play area. This provides more blocks to work with, but if left unchecked, it can result in a game over if any block touches the top. If you happen to clear right down to the floor, you don't have to waste time waiting for more blocks to rise up, as you can hold either the L or R shoulder buttons to hurry the blocks along. This is especially useful in modes like time trial and versus. Selecting one player mode gives you 5 game mode options to choose from. There's Endless Mode, where you keep clearing blocks as the game gets faster and faster until you finally top out. Time Trial Mode gives you only 2 minutes to get as high a score as possible in the short period of time. Stage Clear takes you through increasingly difficult levels where you start with higher and higher blocks, with the goal of clearing all the way down to a goal line that will eventually rise up with the rising blocks. Puzzle Mode sets up blocks that you must clear in a limited amount of moves, with every puzzle getting more and more difficult as you progress. And Versus Mode pits you directly against computer-controlled characters in ascending difficulty. This mode will up the chaos on the field, as making clears, combos, and chains will cause garbage blocks to fall onto the opponent's field. It's in this mode too that you can unlock characters to use throughout the rest of the game, although there's also cheat codes you can use to do that at any time as well. For 2-player modes, there's mainly the aforementioned Versus Mode, but also a 2-player style time trial, where there are no garbage blocks, and both players compete for the highest score in the 2-minute time limit. The gameplay took some getting used to since you're limited to only horizontal swapping, and despite the clearly designed color and shape differences of the blocks, the playing field just felt chaotic to look at first. But once the panic subsided, and I got some easy mode games in, I was trained up very quickly to recognize block clearing potential. Moving further along, I was starting to see more and more combo and chain possibilities on the fly. I even started becoming appreciative of the fact that unlike a lot of other puzzle games, while the blocks were clearing, you're not stuck watching the short clear animation. You can still keep moving and swapping through it, and that becomes a very nice feature to keep your focus going on clearing with efficiency. The gameplay may have had nothing to do with the traditional Tetris style, but it was just as simple and addicting. Success meant keeping a cool head under pressure, and understanding when it was time to set up big clears, or cut your losses and start single clearing to save yourself from topping out. Even while recording footage for this review, I found myself playing every mode quite a bit longer than I had intended. The gameplay gets a 9 out of 10. Yeah, okay, I think Nintendo was onto something when it decided to change the graphics of this game for international audiences. I'm pretty sure young Tony would have shied away from Panel De Pon, whereas following the massive success of Yoshi's Island, seeing Yoshi in a Tetris game definitely hooked me towards it. And I'm sure that goes for just about all the other boys at that time too. The title screen is composed nicely, putting our green dino friend front and center while surrounded by his adolescent counterparts. Heck, I'll even point out the copyright text at the bottom. It's clearly readable, and the rounded backgrounds of the text make them feel soft and not out of place. The characters surrounding the gameplay were all very cute and well drawn. Taking full advantage of the Super Nintendo's color capabilities, they get many layers of shading going on. Now that was good and all, however, I think there may have been a little bit of a rush job on that, because a lot of the shading and highlighting to me felt a little too grainy. There were some graphical areas that I probably would have elected to tone down the shading levels, or even just leave it as a flat color altogether. Another nice touch about the characters though, was how the smaller supporting creatures all had little animations to them, nothing too distracting. But then whenever you win or lose, they go into bigger movements, as if to applaud your success or lament in your failure. The backgrounds were also kept alive with animations that didn't distract from playing the game. It started off simple in Yoshi's screen with simple bubbles floating by, but when you got into other character screens like Lakitu or Gargantua Blargs, the animation was nice, fluid, but small enough to just exist without distraction. And of course, there's the most important part of the game graphically, the play area. With everything going on around the playfield, you tend to forget that this is only 6 blocks wide. The gameplay itself is only taking place in half the screen. But you don't care. Even in the small area, the blocks are very unique from each other using simple color and shape differences. Your swap reticle is just thick enough to be trackable, but not muddying up the field. As I said before, I initially got intimidated by the wall of color and shapes, but I just kept playing, and they all became clear to me. The graphics of Tetris Attack get a 9 out of 10. The first track you hear is a poppy remix of the intro song to Yoshi's Island. It's one of 2 new tracks that were made for the international reskin, the second being Yoshi's stage music, which itself was a more upbeat remix of the story music box theme also from Yoshi's Island. Other than that, most of Panel De Pon's music was kept intact, save for some additional victory themes in versus mode, as well as some track swapping to make Bowser's stage match him more. The music overall feels eclectic, in that they all have some minor genre differences between them, but all still fit in the vein of puzzle game music. They all match the feel of their stages and provide a good audible backdrop for focusing on the action at hand. Funny enough, some tracks' use of key instruments did in fact invoke some sense of nostalgia for me from other games. They just used very similar sounds from all around the SNES's library, and that was pretty cool. The sound effects were all nice and standard for puzzle games. They felt soft on every movement of the swap reticle, as well as the clearing and drop sounds. Excitement sounds did of course crank up the intensity when needed. Some of the movement sounds though did get a bit repetitive over time. However, that was something I noticed when re-watching my recording. While actually playing the game, it all just melded into the background as I was swapping blocks around to save my life. Really though, that's something that's pretty typical of puzzle games. The music and sound of Tetris Attack gets a 10 out of 10. Back in the day, my extended family would rent event spaces in hotels for New Year's Eve parties. We'd party up all together and also have access to our hotel rooms. In 1996, we hit up a hotel that had one of Nintendo's gateway systems on all their TVs. These were specialized consoles modified for hotels and airlines to entertain their customers during their tenure with their services. Offering multiple games, ours that year was the Super Nintendo version, and the star of the night was Tetris Attack. The cousins and I would swap controllers back and forth, competing with each other for as many more wins that we could squeeze into the end of the year. Sadly, as much fun as I had with Tetris Attack, I wasn't bratty enough to bug my parents to buy it. It had been just about 29 years since I last touched this game, but it absolutely brought back the memories when we had to bid farewell to 1996. The nostalgia hit of Tetris Attack gets an 8 out of 10. The 80s and 90s were no stranger to seeing video games get reskins outside of Japan. Before the internet was able to show everyone the world outside their own cultural backyard, it made business sense to change up details to appeal to other markets out there. Another puzzle game called Puyo Puyo got reskinned as Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine on the Sega Genesis, and as Kirby's Avalanche on the Super Nintendo. The most widely known reskin was Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic, which we outside Japan knew as Super Mario Bros. 2. There even was the first Dragon Ball game on the NES that just got rid of any ties to the franchise and released it as Dragon Power. So, by 1996, it really was old hat to have seen Panel De Pon get changed up outside of Japan to match the aesthetic of Yoshi and Friends, especially after the major success of Yoshi's Island. Even to this day, some people who have played both versions tend to lean towards liking Tetris Attack more, so I guess the suits really did know what they were doing. If you come into this game expecting the usual Tetris feel, you'll be in for a surprise, but one that will actually hook you, with gameplay just as addicting as its namesake, and some charming audio and visuals to accompany it. Tetris Attack is a solid rebrand to get you out of your comfort zone.